right, for the exam on Friday, and this is y'all for the 10, the 11, and the 12 o'clock. I have it set up, and it's in room 205 of Macklin Tower. That is in the second floor. The second floor inside the library. I'll have it posted. It's been emailed. It's posted in Blackboard. I'll have it on the doors. And if you just go to the circulation desk and be like, where's Semper's exam? They'll be able to tell you. So that's the first thing. Second thing, as far as the exam is concerned. DSS, and don't say anything now, obviously we're filming, we got a room full of people. If you've got a letter, I may have misplaced a couple of those. Reach out to me as fast as you can just to make sure that I've got your exam in there ready to go. I know I've talked to a number of you during the course of the semester. I want to make sure that everything is good to go and right for Friday. Don't talk about it now. Maybe at the end, walk over, you know, drop me an email, whatever the case is, but want to make sure that you let me know just to remind me on this. Since it's the first exam, I don't want there to be any glitches as far as that's concerned. I got the terms that are pulled up here, and what I figured we'd do, and let me go ahead and stress this right off. There is not going to be anything from Chapter 3 on the exam, because we have not done anything with Chapter 3 yet. So let's just go ahead and take those off. But just about everything else that's up here should actually be fair game. So with this in mind, does anybody have any questions about any of the terms? Yes, go ahead, Danny.
The first one?
You know, I don't think this was actually the number of peaceful and midterm presidential elections in American history, and it's actually up to 115, but I don't think we talked about it. So since we didn't talk about it, let's go ahead and take that off right now. But what I will do is I will add on John Locke, because John Locke is something that we did talk about. But anyway, any other questions about the terms that you've got up here? Yes?
Did we talk about the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan?
Yeah, we did talk about the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan. Yeah. Anybody got anything with Virginia and New Jersey? Go ahead.
Oh, you want me to answer? Or?
Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
Okay, so the New Jersey and the Virginia plan was basically New Jersey, for Virginia basically wanted more representation because they have the most population, right?
Yes.
And in New Jersey, they wanted, in the House of Representatives, they wanted more representative because they had more people. And New Jersey,
okay, Virginia wanted that.
Virginia
okay,
wanted
so
that.
what did New Jersey want again?
New Jersey said it wasn't fair because they had a smaller amount of population, and therefore they were going to be less representative.
So how did they want representation to be?
They wanted to be equal.
Wanted to be equal. Go ahead, Kim.
Can I move up?
You can do what you need to do, but let's focus on the answers right now. Okay, so what's that?
Can I use that chair? And
Okay,
sit
yeah.
there?
If we can get it through. A Virginia plan was based on population, and the idea was what's that? Because Virginia was bigger. So if you had more population, then you would get more representation in the new government. The New Jersey plan was based on equality, and the idea behind the New Jersey plan was smaller states wanted each state to count the same because they felt like they would be discriminated against if it was based on size. Of course, the big states felt like they were being discriminated against if it was just based on equality. How did they compromise this?
The creation of House of Federal Representatives.
The House of Representatives, what plan was that based off of?
That was the Virginia plan.
The Virginia plan became the House of Representatives, and the Senate became the New Jersey plan. What was that compromise called? Connecticut Compromise. So Virginia plan is based on size, population. New Jersey plan was based on equality. Connecticut plan was the combination of the two. House being the Virginia plan, Senate being the New Jersey plan. Any other questions that you got from any of the terms? And we'll just go ahead with Chapter 2 right now, since that's where we started. Go ahead.
Criminal searches?
Criminal searches. Oh, man. This was last Friday's class, I believe. Do y'all remember the different searches that we talked about?
Oh, is this the...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The evidence?
Go ahead. Give me one.
With the examples you gave in class?
Mm-hmm.
You gave one where
They got
about being
swallowed.
shot in the butt and
The 10 o'clock class got this one, and I don't think anybody else did. So this one would be specifically for the 10 o'clock. But the 10 o'clock class where the guy robbed the liquor store and got shot in the side of his ass. And if you remember on that, the police said, hey, if we can harvest the bullet, we'll match it with the gun, and we'll be able to demonstrate that so-and-so robbed the liquor store. Okay, does the hospital have to provide that bullet?
no, because it is internal and it's not in a place where cause potential harm to the
It's internal and it's not life-threatening, so you could say no and the police wouldn't get access. If you were unconscious and the hospital removed the bullet, however, then what?
Then it's outside of your system.
And then at that point, the police could gain access to it with a warrant because now it's not invasive. Other searches that all three classes dealt with, because that was the only one that wasn't. Go ahead, Nancy.
When the guy swallowed whatever the drug.
Morphine.
Yeah.
What happened with the morphine swallow?
The officer made him puke or whatever.
The officer made him puke.
Yeah,
Took him to
they
the
wrote
hospital.
that.
What's that, Jennifer?
Took him to the hospital.
Took him to the hospital. So this guy swallowed morphine. Well, this guy swallowed something. Police officers went to the house. Police officers had a valid warrant, and the warrant was designed basically to gain access. They were looking for meth. That's what they were doing. So when they entered, the door was open. He didn't answer it. Then they entered the back bedroom where they heard noise. He appeared to swallow something right in front of them. Yeah, I know, it really hurts sometimes. So with this in mind, he appeared to. They didn't make him vomit, but they took him to the hospital. And what they tell the hospital folk? We need to pump his stomach. What's that? We want to collect the evidence. The longer that this evidence remains inside of him, the more that in fact it's going to decay, it's going to dissipate. We need to get this evidence out. And when they pumped his stomach, made him vomit, what'd they find? The very morphine. And some of y'all wanted to use this and some of y'all didn't. What did the Supreme Court say? Go loud.
You can't use it because they specifically wanted to pump his stomach to find evidence. They didn't do it to save his life.
Yeah, they actually said no. And you remember who the justice was that wrote the opinion?
No, I don't.
Justice Hot Dog? Justice Frankfurter. Justice Frankfurter said, "This search shocks my conscience." The idea that you could take a man out of his house in the middle of the night against his will and make him vomit and then sift through that vomit on the cold tile floor of the hospital and find evidence to use against him, this is going too far. And to your point, they said if you were trying to save his life, that's one thing, and then you can use the evidence. But they were trying to save the evidence, and that's going too far. I believe the word that Leah used a few minutes ago was, this was invasive. Go ahead.
My question is for the review session, for the criminal searches. So you just want us to remember the cases that were presented in class and the outcomes of the cases?
Yes, so there were 4. There was the shot, well, there were 4 for the 10 o'clock. There was the shot in the ass. There was the vomiting of the morphine. I believe, Jasmine, you murdered your boyfriend in the 12 o'clock class? Yeah. Murdered the cheating boyfriend. And Jasmine, what was the problem for you when you went to the police station?
Oh, I had blood on my finger.
Had blood on your fingers. And what did you do when they were like, "What's that on your finger, Jasmine?"
I put my hand in my pocket and I tried to destroy evidence.
Tried to like wipe it off, and they took your hands out and they got a sample of that and they matched it with your dead boyfriend's blood and they charged you with murder. Had they violated your rights? Because if you remember the other day, we said they didn't read any rights and they didn't have a warrant, right? So had they violated your rights, anybody? Go ahead, Kirsten.
No, because it was external, right?
It was external. I'm using my ring finger. Go ahead, zoom in. It was external, so that's 1. Go ahead, Thomas.
No, because they invited you to the police station.
You had every right to go or not go, so you were not being detained in any capacity. They didn't have to read you your rights. The evidence was external. Then there was a third thing.
Was it the nurse case? Because I remember we talked.
Wasn't the nurse case yet. Go ahead, Sydney. What was the third thing?
Yeah, I just lost it.
It was external. They didn't have to read rights or anything because she wasn't detained. It was voluntary.
Oh yeah, because I was going to say it was voluntary.
She was destroying the evidence. That was the other piece. And police had the ability to act, and it was perfectly legal. They could use it. The nurse was the 4th one that we talked about. And the nurse actually has an article. It's the blood draw article, and I don't have the article listed, but I do have the link in there right now. Do y'all remember the story of Alex Wubbles?
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so basically it was there was an accident, and then so this guy ran into this guy, and then
This guy ran into this guy. Okay, yeah,
and
that's.
the guy ended up in a basically unconscious in the hospital, whatever, and then the police basically were trying to prove that the guy basically had nothing to do with the accident that just happened.
Yeah, they wanted to get a blood sample so that they could demonstrate that he wasn't on any substances. And I believe the truck driver is who they had.
Yeah.
And he was a part-time police officer in another jurisdiction. I kind of think he was trying to look out for his own. But that's not how it worked out,
Yeah.
right?
And that's not how it works out. And basically they wanted to draw his blood while he was unconscious, and the nurse said that under the document that they signed with the hospital, they're not allowed to do that because it is unconstitutional, because A, the person is unconscious and they don't have his permission to do so.
Right, so you can't give consent if you're unconscious.
And B, I believe the quote she used is that your blood is your property, and
Yeah, that's a really good one for the context of John Locke. And I believe the other thing they said in there, or you could have a warrant, and he did not have a warrant. And how did he take it when she said no?
He got mad and basically attacked her and put her hands behind her back and took her to the police car, basically.
Yeah, he did. And I mean, this was really kind of hellacious. The nurse, come on in. The nurse basically was what you could argue, I mean, she was harassed. You could argue that she was, I mean, cuffed, she was screaming at this point. And ultimately, what happened?
It went to court.
Well, I don't know that she sued yet.
It went to court, basically.
Well, no, I don't know that it went to court yet. Actually, there was an investigation, and you notice up here it says detective fired after roughly handcuffing nurse.
Yeah.
She called her supervisor. The supervisor's like, why are you attacking the nurse? She's just the messenger. She's trying to protect the patient's property, the patient not giving consent, this kind of a thing. And ultimately, the detective was fired. The lieutenant over the detective was put on administrative leave. The nurse came out of this as smelling like a rose. I mean, she appeared to have done everything in the proper way. But those were the criminal searches that we had. And, you know, this is probably one of those ones that would be, you know, I mean, that could be a multiple choice question. That one could probably be essay as well. Any other questions from any of these terms? Go ahead, Danny.
The Schoolhouse Rock?
Yeah.
Schoolhouse Rock. Now, normally I show you two, and this is the place where, in fact, I'm going to remove the preamble because I did not get the ability. No, you know what? I'm going to leave the preamble up there. If you look at the quotes that I gave you, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, or life, liberty, and property, was the part that came from the Declaration of Independence. We, the people, is the one that deals with the preamble. And I'm not going to give you an essay on something like that, but the other Schoolhouse Rock is in there, so one of them deals with the Declaration of Independence, the other one deals with the preamble. It's a quick couple of minutes. Take a look at it, but it's basically making sure you know what wording is in the Constitution and what is in the Declaration. Go ahead, Maggie.
Oh, the amendment fractions? What does that mean?
Fractions. Let's talk about fractions. Today, we actually just did the amendment fractions. What does it take to propose a constitutional amendment? 2/3 vote of what, CJ?
Both the houses.
2/3 vote of the House, 2/3 vote of the Senate to propose a constitutional amendment. What does it take to ratify a constitutional amendment? 3/4 vote of what? Of the states. You need 3/4 or 38 states. 2/3 is a fraction that we use in another context, isn't it?
Wait,
We also used it today.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about fractions, the amendment fractions. 2/3 to propose a constitutional amendment, 3/4 to ratify. But what else did we say about 2/3?
Override.
Override a presidential veto. You need a 2/3 vote of the House and the Senate to override a presidential veto. 3/5 is a fraction that we used. For the slaves. Go ahead, explain.
So, like 5 slaves, they count as 3 people.
For what?
For vote, to vote.
For population purposes, and why is determining population so important?
For representation.
For representation in the House of Representatives or the Virginia Plan. We talked about 9/13, didn't we?
No.
9/13 to be able to pass a law under the Articles of Confederation. I think we did talk about that one. And then 13/13 had to be unanimous in order to amend the Articles of Confederation. And I know that one is in there too. So there's 3/5, 2/3, 3/4, 9/13, and 13/13. Make sure that you're comfortable with these.
So the 13/13 was?
To amend the Articles of Confederation. Go ahead, Abdul.
So the 2/3, it's for 2/3 of the House and Senate to propose an amendment, right?
or 2/3 to do what?
Congressional override.
Congressional override of a presidential veto. Yeah.
And that's for both the House and the
Both the House and the Senate, yes. I saw, Kirsten, was it you or did you just give me that question about the fractions? Go ahead, Thomas.
9/13.
It's in the tape now. What else have you got?